It happened a year ago on September 15th, 2022. One of those profound moments that will be bookmarked in my memory bank for the rest of my life. It all began with the construction project on Highway 5 that had rerouted our trips to Saskatoon past Aberdeen. I remember a few occasions when my wife and I would turn towards Aberdeen that I would tell her about my Uncle Bob, who had been married to my aunt but were divorced when I was about 10 years old. I remember how devastated I was, as he was fun to be around and someone I wanted to be like when I grew up, a hero of sorts. I didn't know if he still lived in Aberdeen, but I thought it would be great to see him again. On one occasion, when I had run into Saskatoon alone for an early appointment, I was leaving the city and thought, this is the day I would make my attempt to find Uncle Bob. I remember as I took the access into Aberdeen, I whispered the words, "Lord, it sure would be nice to find Bob today." As I drove into Aberdeen, my plan of attack was to drive into town and find someone to ask if they knew Bob Weeb. It was around noon and I passed two young women walking along the side of the road, but thought they looked too young to know who I was looking for. There wasn't a lot going on over the noon hour. I turned down a few different streets and finally spotted someone watering plants with a garden hose and looked like she would be in the right age bracket. I pulled over and rolled down my window and told this lady that I was looking for someone and asked if she knew Bob Weeb. She repeated to me, "Bob Weeb?" "Yes," I replied, and then mentioned Bob's brother's name for clarity. She said, "Bob Weeb works for us. He is combining canola by the edge of town. You will see 4 John Deere combines working in the field just beyond the old elevator and some grain bins." I was shocked. The first person God led me to not only knew my uncle, but he worked for them. In my surprise, I told her that since he was busy, I would probably not bother him, but when she sees him, just tell him Harlen Block says hello. I attempted to head out of town toward Highway 27. I was leaving town and suddenly noticed an old elevator on my right and grain bins. Then right in front of me were 4 John Deere combines. God had led me right to the field where they were working. I prayed again, if there is an approach close to the road ahead, I'll drive into the field. As I drove onto the crossroad that would take me to the highway, I saw there was an approach directly across from me and began to realize that God was taking me right to the person I had asked him to help me find just moments earlier. I drove into the field, and the man operating the grain cart was standing beside the tractor, so I drove up and asked which combine Bob Weeb was running. He pointed it out, and I asked if I could leave my truck there and jump in with Bob. I ran over to Bob's combine, climbed the ladder, opened the door, and extended my hand and said, "Hi Bob, it's Harlen Block." What an exciting moment. Reunion, reconnection, and memories. I rode for about 20 minutes, enjoying the opportunity to catch up on life a bit. Overwhelmed as I headed back to my truck, I thought about the last hour when I didn't even know if Bob still lived in the Aberdeen area, let alone find him. A simple prayer, a simple whispered request, and God made it all happen. I felt humbled, privileged, and awestruck that God would answer my simple prayer. My experience reminds me of the precise events God put in place to bring Rebekah to Abraham's servant in the search for a wife for Isaac in Genesis 24. The children of Israel following the pillar of cloud by day and a fire by night as God led them out of captivity to the promised land in the book of Exodus. In Matthew 2, we read about the wise men following the star to find the King of the Jews. God leads and directs us and has a specific plan for each one of us. Psalm 139:16 says, "Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." God has a plan, a story, and a direction for your life. He is interested in your day-to-day. He will lead you in the way you should go, says Psalm 32:8. September 15th is forever a special day for me now. I witnessed again a loving God who hears our prayers and shows up and reveals his power and plan for our lives. Even his timing is impeccable. As I drove away from the woman who directed me to Bob, I noticed she went into the house as I drove off. Had I been too early or too late, I would have missed out. I believe God orchestrated all the events that day in order to answer my simple prayer, and I know he can do the same for you.